let's be careful about how we talk about that because we don't want to automatically assume that everything out there in the digital world is unsafe. Because as you mentioned, there are so many benefits of many aspects of technology, and it is establishing the right balance for each individual kid who are all going to be different.
Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits Podcast. I'm Hillary Wilkinson. Whether you're starting your parenting journey with a newborn or looking to connect with your teen on technology, let's learn some new healthy screen habits together. Since 2020, global social media use has surged by 20%, with kids ages 8 to 18 spending an average of 7.5 hours daily on screens. These numbers come from the CDC. And at the same time, 2/3 of parents think parenting is harder today than it was 20 years ago, citing the overuse of technology is the reason. And this comes from the NIH. So we recognize there is an urgent need for improved tools to support parents as they help their children foster healthy screen habits. And Aura is a company that is answering this call. This past July, Aura hosted a digital parenthood summit and commanded a lot of attention in the digital wellness community. Today, I get to speak with their chief medical officer. Welcome to Healthy Screen Habits, Dr. Scott Kollins.
Thank you, Hillary. It is a pleasure to be here. I love the lead in, such important context setting, and you made it easy for setting up some of the stuff that we're working on.
Fantastic. So, Dr. Scott, I am always a fan of, maybe it's because, that Marvel has led me this path, but I'm always a fan of an origin story. So, can you share yours? What led you to get involved with digital wellness and your current position at Aura?
Yeah, I'll try to I'll try to keep my origin story fairly brief. But so I am a clinical psychologist by training, and I spent most of my grown-up life as an academic. So I spent a good bit of time on the faculty in the Department of Psychiatry at Duke for about 21 years. I ran a program primarily for kids and adults with ADHD. But I was very interested, starting, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago, in how we can use technology to improve mental health outcomes and measure mental health outcomes and things like that. So I was doing my academic thing and I was writing my grants and trying to write my papers and things like that. And I think a couple things happened about 4 years ago. One, COVID hit, and I think that was just an upheaval for everybody in so many ways. Combined with that, and you alluded to this, my own kids, and I currently I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, so they were 10 and 8 at the time. I think they ended up, especially my older one, really impacted by what all the things that changed during COVID, including going into a completely virtual world. And so that led to some challenges. And as a psychologist, I was looking at my situation and thinking, I'm an expert in this area. I live in a really resource rich environment. I have resources myself, and I can't get my kids the things that they need. I've got to do something else. And so it was really kind of that led me to leave academia. I didn't go straight to Aura, but the so many great things as an academic, and I learned a lot and was able to contribute to science. But I felt like I wasn't getting stuff done fast enough, and I had this sense of urgency. So I went out into the industry world. Initially, I worked for a data company that was focused on using big data to answer questions about mental health. Then spent some time working for a digital therapeutic company that had developed an app to treat ADHD. And we had done a lot of that work while I was at Duke. And then I got this very interesting email from a job recruiter saying there's a cybersecurity company that is looking for a chief medical officer. And I thought, that is really unusual. I want to know more about this. I started learning about Aura, what they had already built, how they had established themselves as a company in the identity protection and fraud protection space, and what the vision was for how we can now extend this to providing tools to help, exactly what you said, to help parents navigate this tricky world. So I was sold pretty early on the vision, and here I am. So I got started about 3 months ago, 3.5 months ago.
Mm. So it's interesting. Aura has this origin as a cybersecurity company and now has a digital parenthood initiative. And you have this really interesting amalgam of people on your board from like Hollywood sorts, like Jeffrey Katzenberger, like co-founder of DreamWorks. I mean, I'm looking at
Yeah.
these names and I'm like, what? To Robert Downey Jr., as well as tech experts and business leaders. But then I've also seen that Aura uses AI, and I kind of can't wrap my brain around all of this. And can you tease it apart? Like where is the parent initiative situation headed?
Yeah. So the way I think about it, and you're right. I mean, it's a we are aspiring to do a lot, but historically, and the way that Aura was founded was around digital safety, primarily for adults. Hari Ravichandran, who's our founder and CEO, he had his identity stolen 8, 10 years ago, and as he was working through that, he realized I can build better tools that are out there to help protect others from having to go through this. What we are doing with digital parenthood is really it's just an extension of that. It is promoting safety online, but for kids and families. And there's a couple of different, well, more than a couple, but there are different considerations, but it falls under the broader umbrella of online safety and security. The way that I think about it also, and trying to distill this down, and you mentioned something about this in the intro about parents feeling like it was harder to parent now. Way back in the old days, when you and I were growing up, um, parents, their job in terms of monitoring and keeping tabs on what their kids were doing and keeping them safe usually revolved around three things. One, do I know where my kids are? Two, do I know who they're hanging out with? And three, do I know what they're doing? And those three aspects of parental monitoring, actually, there's a lot of research that supports those things are really good and promote healthy child development. The challenge that we're facing now is all that stuff happens while a kid is looking at their device. So in some ways it's a lot more covert to know and understand what is my kid doing online? Where are they? What sites are they visiting? What content are they consuming? Who are they spending time with? And so we're trying to bring those things, we're trying to build tools to help it make it easier for parents to do what we know is healthy for their kids' development.
Mm. Yeah, so I keep hearing this word safety coming through with you, which I appreciate very much. And I as a deep believer in the power of education, I feel like yes, safety boundaries are important, but sort of equally important in this space is the educational aspect of teaching strategies for balancing that health and screen time. And
Yes.
in reading through some of your stuff, I've read about digital burnout. And can you, I know I feel like I'm asking you layers of questions. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but let's first kind of go into digital burnout and like, what is this and why are we, and then let's get into some strategies.
Yeah. So first off, just I I I actually just had this conversation earlier this week with somebody about the notion of safety online. Who this person who thought, yeah, let's be careful about how we talk about that because we don't want to automatically assume that everything out there in the digital world is unsafe because as you mentioned, there are so many benefits of many aspects of technology, and it is establishing the right balance for each individual kid who are all going to be different, right? Um, so when I think about burnout, I have I have witnessed this firsthand in the last couple of weeks as My kids are finishing their summer vacation, camps are done, and what are they going to do? So they have, and and I recognize this, and this is another big motivation for me is like I have kids right in the age range, and as a parent, I'm even experiencing some of the stuff that we're trying to develop things to help address. But I see my kids, which I think is a very common story, um, somewhat having lost the ability to kind of figure out and entertain themselves on what they need to be doing. I was actually also having another conversation with another mom earlier this week who said, um, kids were home, not in camps, told them, go do something and make sure it's not on screens. And they came back and they said, we're gonna build a fort. We need this, 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 and this. And she said her immediate thought was, oh no, they're going to make a huge mess. I'm going to tell them. And then she stopped herself and said, fine, go make the mess because you're you're exercising that part of your brain to do something other than just, do whatever you're going to do online. So when I think about burnout, I think about this like kind of restricting the experiences outside of the device, which we know those things are really, really good for healthy development.
So having more of the offline experiences to
Yes.
kind of insulate from this digital overwhelm, if you
Yeah,
will.
to balance it. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more about being mindful of our own device usage, which honestly is always the hardest thing to look at, but it's going to be well worth it. Do you know what's happening during your child's online exchanges? As well intentioned as we are, often reading every text message, post, and email is just not realistic. This is where Bark comes in to help. Founded in 2015, Bark Technologies provides a parental control app that monitors and alerts parents to online threats. Bark was created for parents by parents to offer a better, easier, and more effective way to keep children safe online. Bark monitors posts and messagings for things like signs of bullying and communication with dangerous strangers. Bark's algorithms analyze all activity and issue parents notifications via their chosen communication method. Gain peace of mind and get 10% off of Bark service for life by using the Healthy Screen Habits link. Go to our website at healthyscreenhabits.org, click on the Tools button in the drop-down menu, and look for products we endorse to find Bark. It will be the easiest click you make all day. Peace of mind is just a bark away. I'm speaking with Dr. Scott Kollins, the Chief Medical Officer for Aura and author of over 200 scientific papers. His role at Aura is going to be instrumental in shaping the company's approach and parent understanding of youth safety and mental wellness in this digital era. So, Dr. Scott, I'm going to ask you a big question. What do you see is the biggest digital threat to childhood?
Ooh,
I
that
know,
is a big
sorry.
one.
I know. It
Yeah,
was being
no,
all nice, nice, fun, fun, and now I just came in like, uh,
yeah. I think this would be a healthy debate, I think, among lots of academics and lots of parents.
uh-huh.
For me, and I will caveat my answer by saying this is not necessarily based on like a deep dive in the scientific literature.
Sure.
I think it is this notion that we think about of displacement, and we were just talking about it before the break. What is device usage displacing in terms of other activities, face-to-face interactions, physical activity, sleep? Uh, really important. So I think figuring out that balance and again recognizing that there are many, many really, really important positive aspects to technology use. If you in your intro you cited the statistics, 7 hours a day on a
Mm-hmm.
screen.
Mm-hmm.
What else could a child be doing in those 7 hours that might be better for that particular individual kid's well-being and development? So that's my biggest my biggest threat.
Yeah, biggest threat is displacement. Yeah, I could not agree with you more. And it's stealing time from building those coping skills that we need later on in life to be able to deal with the bigger and bigger challenges that we get handed as we
Yes.
travel our our journey. So,
Yes, I agree.
so I don't mean to turn this all towards the hard stuff, but I think you're here, so I've got the opportunity. I'm going to ask you the hard things.
Please. No, no, no. Lay it on me.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about parent use of devices. And I we are continually talking about the importance of modeling healthy screen habits and all of these things. But I think it always helps people to have kind of an image of what device overuse looks like. So could you kind of draw a picture? What does parent device overuse look like? And also then can you take it further and talk about possible outcomes?
Yeah. So I think I can speculate a little bit on outcomes. I'm not sure that we know a lot about if this has been a, deeply researched question. But in my mind, what overuse looks like, and I'm going to be, I don't know, I'm going to paint maybe a little bit of an overgeneralization. But when I think about parental overuse, I think about if I go to well, actually, it doesn't have to be overgeneralized. Go to most public places, uh, and look around, and especially look at people below the age of 25, and the number of people that are whether they're looking at it or engaging with it directly or having it in their hand, like you won't find very many people that are not holding their device. And so when I think about parental overuse, I think about that's what that looks like at home and in situations, same thing we talked about a minute ago with displacement, where before these devices existed, there would be, an interaction, or I'm doing something for myself that is not looking at this device. So I think that's what it looks like. I think one other thing that comes to mind with this that's related to, something we talked about earlier. When Aura hosted our digital parenthood panel that you alluded to, one of the panels was of some young people, and they were talking about their experiences growing up as digital natives. But one of the things that stuck with me more than anything was this young woman who said, she was, I think, late teens, early 20s, said, "My generation, we don't know how to be bored,"
Mhm, mhm,
which just really stuck with me. And have parents trend towards that also. I'm standing in line at the pharmacy. Oh, I got to check. I got to look at something. If you've got 30 seconds of downtime, I need information or something else. So I think that we're moving a little bit into solutions, but I think taking a step back from that, and I ask myself if I'm in those situations, hey, do I really need this? Do I really need to look at my phone? Like, can I stand and just take it in and think? So anyway, that's a little bit of a rambling answer of what it looks like and sort of maybe some steps to solutions. But I think that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting to kind of explore, you know, the use we talk so much about like, oh, the Gen Zers or everybody, the younger crew having, uh, being deficient in coping mechanisms because they're relying so heavily on digital distraction. I would argue that myself for sure and other parents I know, when I start feeling bigger emotions, when I start getting very frustrated, which I mean I have teenagers, it's part of the human
Yes.
experience. This is not supposed to go entirely smoothly, and it helps me to remember that. But I find myself being pulled, like, I just want to be distracted. I don't want to be thinking about this, so I do something else. And one
Yep.
thing that I have found that has helped me, which this is very funny, but is vacuuming. Because when
Huh.
you're vacuuming, you cannot be looking at your phone. And I have
Yep.
a very loud, like stick vacuum, stick like
Yeah.
Dyson vacuum, and I have a Labrador, so I always need to vacuum, right? So I can't be listening to a podcast. Like I'm worrying about, like, as I age, I worry about damaging everything. I'm like, oh, I can't crank the
Yeah. Right.
volume up too loud in my ears. So yeah, so I have found that vacuuming kind of gets me into a little bit more of a zen spot of like, okay, now I'm sure my kids are probably like, oh no, she's vacuuming. It's gotten really bad. She's vacuuming.
But but you know what? I mean, I think that's a great story. I think that you could probably leverage that in lots of positive. You're doing something that's good. You're getting the dog hair up. But that what that makes me think of is you are finding your own little moment of mindfulness. You don't need to look at other things, and whether or not you are sort of processing whatever emotions might be there, you're in your moment because you're looking and, oh, I got to get that spot over there, and that's really important. And just carving out even those little moments is just it's healthy for us. It's healthy for our kids.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for making that sound healthy, not neurotic. So thank you.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
always a fine line, Hillary.
right. Okay. Do you have advice? Like, how do you recommend parents go about setting clear limits? How do you, or setting these boundaries? Like I know what we offer at Healthy Screen Habits, but I'm always looking to add to what do you recommend? I feel like we can learn so much from each other.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, a couple things. For I mean, you know, this is one of the things that we build, and this is our product, and this is I think there are there are a number of possibilities, but being able to digitally and sort of automatically through a product, whether it's ours or others, where you can set limits, you can, monitor time and things like that. I think that is important. That forms the basis of discussion and conversation. But I think even backing up a step, one of the things that is really, really important is to talk to your kids about what these limits are going to look like.
Mm.
Um, I don't know what you guys, I don't know if this is something similar to what you guys have, but the American Academy of Pediatrics has a great sort of template to set up a family media plan.
Hmm.
Uh, and you can structure it a little bit differently depending on how old your kid is, because obviously when kids are younger, it's hard to put specific time points on ages, by the way, just because kids are so different. People say, well, how old should my kid be when they get a phone? It really depends. My 12-year-old has one. She got hers when she was 11. My 14-year-old still doesn't. So
Hmm.
there's no one answer for that. But the same holds true for how you're going to set up the family approach to screen time and media use. And the one of the reasons I like that, and we actually, my family sat down in, I have tweens and a teenager too, and so I got lots of eye rolls when I suggested this. I probably got a half eye roll from my wife too, but so we're going to do this. But it was very productive, and we established, okay, here's some screen free zones. When we're home together, which isn't like all the time by any means, we're going to put away our devices. And let me tell you, my kids now will be the first ones to call out my wife or me if we're at the table and the phone comes out.
For sure.
So those kinds of things, but I think that the foundation of that is that communication and discussion, and whether it's the AAP's approach or other tools that might be out there to help have that conversation, and then layering on top of that ways to help monitor and actually enforce some of those the limits and the rules, I think is sort of best practice.
Right. It's kind of that Venn diagram approach. It's like no one thing is going to get you all the way there. So you have to layer in all of these areas.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the thing that is just again to kind of underscore um, probably the hardest part about setting up and monitoring and having boundaries is that conversation. You can't just get you can't it's not going to work nearly as well if you get the Aura product, turn on these controls, don't have a conversation with your kid. That's going to go sideways in five different ways, right? Sitting down, taking the time, hearing from kids. their development is super important. We don't want to build tools that are just like top-down surveillance. We want to meet kids where they're at. We want to understand, recognize that, just in the same way that I was talking about before, the things that we used to kind of pay attention to before devices. I didn't know every single conversation, or my parents didn't know every single conversation I was having with people. Or if I went to a party, I would tell them I'm going somewhere. As long as I was truthful and they knew where I was at, they trusted me. I trusted them to give me some autonomy. We've got to tackle it the same way when we're talking about, development online.
Yeah. And in the event you recommended the AAP's device plan,
The
healthy
media plan.
screen,
Yep.
you right, right. Media plan, correct. Yeah, Healthy Screen Habits does have a free downloadable tool called a family tech plan that is designed
Perfect.
very similarly, and it's not as it's meant to be a living document, but it's a 5-step plan, something you can do in an evening, and it's meant to be just like you're saying, that conversational springboard to
Yeah.
take us into that area of this is something really important, and this is what we need to spend time on talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Dr. Scott Kollins for his healthy screen habit.
Diving into the world of smartphones can be a wild ride for kids and parents alike. Whether your child is getting their first smartphone or has had one for a while, chances are they're still figuring out the do's and don'ts of using a smartphone wisely. Our book is here to help. Healthy Screen Habits for Tweens and Teens, a training workbook to help you use your phone wisely, is the tool your child needs to navigate life in the digital world. From tackling poor phone etiquette to addressing social media anxieties and online safety concerns, we have your child covered. Written especially for adolescents, we've put together all the information, tips, hacks, and rules to ensure that your child's phone is a useful tool that they control, not the other way around. We explain the whys behind the rules of phone use. We show your child the possible traps and dangers to watch out for, how to prevent them, and how to fix them if your child has made a mistake. We give your child the 5 core healthy screen habits to use daily, protecting them from some of the worst mistakes tweens and teens make while using their phones. This workbook will teach your child how to use their phone as a tool to help them do great things in their one amazing life, and it will make your life so much easier at the same time. Packed with colorful graphics and easy to read content, this resource is a game changer for kids. Don't miss out. Buy your copy of Healthy Screen Habits for Tweens and Teens on Amazon.com today.
I'm speaking with Dr. Scott Kollins from Aura, a company whose mission is to create a safer internet for everyone. So, Dr. Scott, on the every episode of the Healthy Screen Habits podcast, I ask each guest for a healthy screen habit. And this is going to be a tip or takeaway that listeners can put into practice right in their own home, preferably quickly. What's yours?
I think I've mentioned this kind of a couple times throughout our conversation, but I think communication early and often with between parents and kids, um, and recognizing that those conversations and those discussions are going to there's no one size fits all. The way you, like I said, the way I talk to my 12-year-old daughter, who is pretty responsible with her tech use, is very different than my 14-year-old son, who is frankly battled technology addiction. So you gotta meet them where they're at, but communicating early and often, and from the time that even before they have their own devices, just you know how they're going to be using the family tablet, and then when they get to the point where they might have their own devices.
Yeah, yeah. And I like your often component because I feel like with so many hard conversations that we have as parents, whether it's about sex or porn or device use or whatever, we kind of operate off of a checklist. We operate like, oh, phew, got that one done. Okay, on to the next. And it's if you've listened at all to to previous podcasts, you will recognize the analogy I'm about to make with our conversations about tech needing to be like hydration, where we little sips of water, little talk conversations all along the path. We can't drink a gallon of water on Sunday and think we're going to be fine on Wednesday. So little sips of water.
I really love that analogy. I told you before we get started, I'm going to be using that. One of the you guys may have similar resources with your website, but another another really good resource is also the American Academy of Pediatrics. In that same the same they have a whole center on social media use and youth mental health. That's where their family media plan is, but they also have conversation starters, which I think are wonderful, and
Fantastic.
they're developmentally sort of different. So this conversation starters for teenagers are going to be different from your 8-year-olds, all around media use, and it's tricks and tips to kind of get that conversation going. And like you said with the hydration, it's a constant discussion, even daily check-ins on various things. So couldn't agree with you more.
Right. As always, you can find a complete transcript of this show, as well as a link to Aura by visiting the show notes for this episode. You do this by going to healthyscreenhabits.org, click the podcast button, and find this episode. Dr. Scott, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing all of the ways that yourself and Aura is leading new ways into digital safety and wellness.
Thank you so much, Hillary. I appreciate what you guys are doing. This was a lot of fun.
For more information, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Screen Habits. Make sure to visit our website, healthyscreenhabits.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, it's fun, and you get a healthy new screen habit each week. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you giving us a quick rating. It really does help other people find us and spread the word of healthy screen habits. Or if you'd simply like to tell a friend, we'd love that too. I so appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and I look forward to learning more healthy habits together.